Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, here we are. In January, I wrote a letter that appeared in the Columbus Dispatch in which I first called the Senate Republicans who would not take a position on this bill RINOs. Republicans in name only. And now we are, what, 6 months since that letter appeared, and we're still dealing with these RINOs. This is what I wrote in the dispatch. If the heartbeat bill is defeated, it won't be because abortion advocates like Planned Parenthood defeated it. This bill, which protects beating hearts, will only go down to defeat if RINOs, that is, Republicans in name only, like these right next to me, this representation of what we have in our Senate, if these Republicans in name only, who campaigned as pro-life advocates, don't forget that, kill the bill. That was in January. 6 months now. And what do we have? These RINOs are trying to kill this bill. But what's worse than a RINO? It's bad enough to be a Republican in name only, but it's worse to be a pro-lifer in name only. These Republicans who refuse to take a vote, who refuse to put this to a vote, are pro-lifers in name only. They're PLINOs. Now I know it's not as catchy, as RINO, but they're PLINOs. They campaign as pro-life. They raise money off of the pro-life community. They are put here to end abortion, and when given an opportunity to do so, what do? They say it's not time. They say the heartbeat bill's unconstitutional. We've heard all the excuses. These PLINOs in the Senate say the heartbeat bill's not constitutional. What these senators seem to forget is that it's not the heartbeat bill that's unconstitutional, it's Roe v. Wade that's unconstitutional. That's what they've seemed to have forgotten. And we need to remind them of that. You see, the Constitution is what we should compare pro-life legislation against. Not Roe versus Wade. Not Roe versus Wade. And the Constitution says in the 14th Amendment that no person shall be deprived the right to life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's the standard. Not Roe versus Wade. And these senators who say that the heartbeat bill is unconstitutional are comparing it to an unconstitutional law. How is that unconstitutional? They need to compare it, if they're going to compare it at all, to the Constitution itself, and the heartbeat bill passes the test. It passes the test. If anything, it doesn't go far enough. And we'll get to that later. It's the heartbeat bill that's consistent with the United States Constitution. And it's Roe v. Wade that runs afoul against it. And if our senators are going to consider a piece of legislation, as they say they are doing with the heartbeat bill, they need to compare it to the U.S. Constitution, not Roe versus Wade. Let me digress for 1 second. What's happening at this State House is nothing new historically. And Janet will remember earlier this year I sent her a movie. And the movie was about suffragette Alice Paul. Alice Paul. And if you don't know the story of Alice Paul, it's being recreated before our eyes right here in the state of Ohio. And that is that Alice Paul was diligent to try to pass a constitutional amendment to give the women a right to vote in this country. And she was part of a national organization, more of a mainstream, if you would, women's rights group at the time. And there came a point that Alice Paul realized that the mainstream institutional movement of the women's rights movement was going in the wrong direction, and that they were satisfied with the status quo. And Alice Paul said, "We will not rest until women have the right to vote." And she broke from that mainstream organization, and there was a split, there was a divide in the movement. And that divide led to Alice Paul, through her efforts and many others, to the recognition that women now have the constitutional right to vote. The mainstream, the institutional, the movement people were left in the dust because they were living in the past. We're in the future. We're living in the future. We're living in today. The heartbeat bill is the piece of legislation that needs to get through this chamber. Now, history will prove this correct, because it has in the past. It will prove that what Janet is doing through the heartbeat team is the path to take, and that the mainstream of this movement, as much as the good they've done, they've lived out their course. It's time to pass the heartbeat bill. And if these legislators continue to recognize Roe v. Wade as the standard, which is what they're doing, to which we compare all pro-life legislation against, then they're not pro-life. They're PLINOs. They're PLINOs. They're pro-lifers in name only. And we're not going to give them cover. We're not going to give them our money for their campaigns. We're not going to recognize Roe versus Wade as the standard ever. We will follow the United States Constitution. That's what we'll do. Not Roe versus Wade. And we will pass the protective heartbeat bill this session. God bless you. Thank you very much.